A reading from 2 Kings chapter 11. As soon as King Ahaziah's mother, Athaliah, learned of her son's murder, she gave orders for all the members of the royal family to be killed. Only Ahaziah's son Joash escaped. He was about to be killed with the others, but was rescued by his aunt Jehosheba, who was King Jehoram's daughter and Ahaziah's half-sister. She took him and his nurse into a bedroom in the temple and hid him from Athaliah so that he was not killed. For 6 years, Jehosheba took care of the boy and kept him hidden in the temple while Athaliah ruled as queen. But in the 7th year, Jehoiada the priest sent for the officers in charge of the royal bodyguard and of the palace guards and told them to come to the temple, where he made them agree under oath to what he planned to do. He showed them King Ahaziah's son Joash and gave them the following orders. When you come on duty on the Sabbath, 1/3 of you are to guard the palace. Another third are to stand guard at the Sur gate, and the other third are to stand guard at the gate behind the other guards. The 2 groups that go off duty on the Sabbath are to stand guard at the temple to protect the king. You are to guard King Joash with drawn swords and stay with him wherever he goes. Anyone who comes near you is to be killed. The officers obeyed Jehoiada's instructions and brought their men to him, those going off duty on the Sabbath and those going on duty. He gave the officers the spears and shields that had belonged to King David and had been kept in the temple. And he stationed the men with drawn swords all around the front of the temple to protect the king. Then Jehoiada led Joash out, placed the crown on his head, and gave him a copy of the laws governing kingship. Then Joash was anointed and proclaimed king. The people clapped their hands and shouted, "Long live the king!" Queen Athaliah heard the noise being made by the guards and the people, so she hurried to the temple where the crowd had gathered. There she saw the new king standing by the column at the entrance of the temple, as was the custom. He was surrounded by the officers and the trumpeters, and the people were all shouting joyfully and blowing trumpets. Athaliah tore her clothes in distress and shouted, "Treason! Treason!" Jehoiada did not want Athaliah killed in the temple area, so he ordered the army officers, "Take her out between the rows of guards and kill anyone who tries to rescue her." They seized her, took her to the palace, and there, at the horse gate, they killed her. The priest Jehoiada had King Joash and the people make a covenant with the Lord that they would be the Lord's people. He also made a covenant between the king and the people. Then the people went to the temple of Baal and tore it down. They smashed the altars and the idols and killed Matan, the priest of Baal, in front of the altars. Jehoiada put guards on duty at the temple. And then he, the officers, the royal bodyguard, and the palace guards escorted the king from the temple to the palace, followed by all the people. Joash entered by the guard gate and took his place on the throne. All the people were filled with happiness, and the city was quiet now that Athaliah had been killed in the palace. Joash became king of Judah at the age of 7. The word of the Lord. A reading from 2 Kings chapter 12. In the 7th year of the reign of King Jehu of Israel, Joash became king of Judah, and he ruled in Jerusalem for 40 years. His mother was Zibiah from the city of Beersheba. Throughout his life, he did what pleased the Lord, because Jehoiada the priest instructed him. However, the pagan places of worship were not destroyed, and the people continued to offer sacrifices and burn incense there. Joash called the priests and ordered them to save up the money paid in connection with the sacrifices in the temple, both the dues paid for the regular sacrifices and the money given as free will gifts. Each priest was to be responsible for the money brought by those he served, and the money was to be used to repair the temple as needed. But by the 23rd year of Joash's reign, the priests still had not made any repairs in the temple. So he called in Jehoiada and the other priests and asked them, "Why aren't you repairing the temple? From now on, you are not to keep the money you receive. You must hand it over so that the repairs can be made." The priests agreed to this and also agreed not to make the repairs in the temple. Then Jehoiada took a box, made a hole in the lid, and placed the box by the altar on the right side as one enters the temple. The priests on duty at the entrance put in the box all the money given by the worshippers. Whenever there was a large amount of money in the box, the royal secretary and the high priest would come, melt down the silver, and weigh it. After recording the exact amount, they would hand the silver over to the men in charge of the work on the temple, and these would pay the carpenters, the builders, the masons, and the stone cutters, buy the timber and the stones used in the repairs, and pay all other necessary expenses. None of the money, however, was used to pay for making silver cups, bowls, trumpets, or tools for tending the lamps, or any other article of silver or of gold. It was all used to pay the workers and to buy the materials used in the repairs. The men in charge of the work were thoroughly honest, so there was no need to require them to account for the funds. The money given for the repayment offerings and for the offerings for sin was not deposited in the box. It belonged to the priests. At that time, King Hazael of Syria attacked the city of Gath and conquered it. Then he decided to attack Jerusalem. King Joash of Judah took all the offerings that his predecessors Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah had dedicated to the Lord, added to them his own offerings and all the gold in the treasuries of the temple and the palace, and sent them all as a gift to King Hazael, who then led his army away from Jerusalem. Everything else that King Joash did is recorded in the history of the kings of Judah. King Joash's officials plotted against him, and two of them, Josachar, son of Shimeath, and Jehozabad, son of Shomer, killed him at the house built on the land that was filled in on the east side of Jerusalem, on the road that goes down to Silla. Joash was buried in the royal tombs in David's city, and his son Amaziah succeeded him as king. The word of the Lord.